Go. Welcome everyone to the inaugural presentation this evening for the 2024 Western Connecticut UFO Conference. My name is Aurelio Maraca. I'm the Technology Program Coordinator here at the Danbury Library. And on behalf of the Friends of the Danbury Library, we welcome you to this annual event that happens. I think this is our 8th, 9th year doing this. So this has been quite a challenging conference to put together, but a rewarding one. And part of that reward is meeting wonderful presenters, lecturers, authors, folks who, know a lot about what we're going to be this whole UAP, UFO, alien abduction phenomenon. But I'd like to stress, as Peter and I have spoken beforehand, not everybody is an expert because there's a lot of unknowns going on here. And I know there's a lot of revelation. We're very close to the brink of what they call disclosure. But there's a lot of information coming out in the last 18 months, I think has been pretty revelatory. But this evening, we're going to kind of like kick it into different gear, and we're going to be talking about the hidden structures on the moon and on Mars with Peter Robbins, who's a lecturer, author, fantastic speaker, and a wonderful mind. Peter, welcome to the Western Connecticut UFO Conference.
Thank you, Aurelio. It's great to be back in Danbury, virtually at least. And I'm honored to be your first speaker in what really is a sensational conference series. I only wish more libraries around the country would pick up on your model.
Thank you.
Over the decades I've done this work, I've chosen subjects that interest me enough to research them, investigate them, and ultimately sometimes write papers about them or give talks or, have it be a chapter in a book or what have you. The subject that I'm on to at the moment, only in the sense that I'm leaving it shortly, so to say, because it was never mine to begin with. And it's a good example of kind of the organic way this can work. And maybe some of you out there are investigators or becoming researchers on your own. That's the way we begin as a rule, unless you're going to study ufology at a particular university or UFO journalism. I don't know who offers those courses. We're all self-taught in this area. More than 40 years ago, I remember seeing images purporting to be of the surface of the moon that showed anomalies, things that didn't seem to be there, geometric type things, and all of which could be hypothetically plays of light or your imagination or some aspect of photography and image capturing that can play tricks with us. Anyway, at the time, NASA had a paper catalog that was available, and you could order 8x10 generation first glossy prints, Hasselblad original detailing in the images, and a number of us did. And in my case, I grew up with a dad who was a jeweler. So from the time I was a kid, I had a 10-power glass. And even I was finding the occasional seeming anomaly. And then, we move on to other subjects and other things. Early this year, a friend and colleague, Ben Moss is his name, was a guest on my radio show. It's a weekly radio show called Meanwhile Here on Earth. And Ben and his writing partner, Tony Aguilera, have written a terrific book on the Lonnie Zamora UFO landing case of the 60s called Not of This Earth. Very good addition to anybody's UFO library. But Tony, Ben had taken to starting to post some of these photos that I remembered from NASA, but much newer generation and much clearer prints on his Facebook page, and ones of Mars as well. And I just got back into it and searched out the databases and became so interested over the first months of the year that I put together this presentation. And I'm ready when you are, Aurelio.
Oh, you will need to share the screen.
Uh-huh, then I better. And okay. How do I get those guys on the left off?
I think you would just start your presentation. It'll go away.
Okay. You're right. Well, again, since we've been sending satellites into space, or shortly thereafter, we've been sending satellites into space with cameras attached. In the case of Americans, it's mostly been Hasselblad, German technology, and as good as it gets. The earliest images that we have, of course, are a bit grainy, but more to the point, and the point, hold it. This is something we have all seen all our lives, one way or the other. This very simple form exists in every culture, in every city, to a degree, in every countryside. It can only be, unless it's a stage set, what seems to be the remains of a simple structure. This is a NASA photograph from the surface of Mars. This is a bit more subtle, but the odds are so against what we're seeing happening in nature that I have to make a similar conclusion. This particular image is on the moon. When we started making our missions to Mars and then made the next kind of generational jump and started to have rovers, roaming around their immediate area and photographing everything that they encountered. We started to get back photos not taken 200-300 miles up, but on the ground. Now, this is a perfect example of something that some people might say, wow, that's something. No, it might be something, but I think it's more likely a rock with another one leaning up against it. My methodology, all the decades I've worked, has been deductive reasoning, basically, inspired by my favorite childhood detective, Sherlock Holmes. You begin with the most mundane, everyday possibility as the solution to your problem. Examine it fully. If it doesn't pan out, you take one step up to the next most boring possibility. And you exhaust those possibilities until they're done. And then things become interesting. So for me, this is not really interesting. This, on the other hand, is. And we will be coming back to this image because it is about as extreme as it can get to challenge our thinking, even if we are very open-minded, as I expect most of the people in this room are. What we're looking at is on Mars. Right. Where do we find these images? One site, and it's a perfect one to start with, is this one, Mars Anomalies Research.com. And that's anomalies with a YS as opposed to IES, Mars Anomalies Research.com. They're specialty investigators, people not like me, who spend their time in other places doing other things. These folks comb photographs, micrometer by micrometer, and then post what their perception, what their opinion is on what they're seeing. In some cases, it's a very interesting dialogue that goes on. Sometimes I find myself thinking these people are all insane, and other times that my gosh, they're seeing things I didn't even think to look at. So here, this small bright area if we take it a little bit more of an enlargement, it looks kind of like a skull with a light bulb over it. But does that mean that's what it is or what it looks like? And then again, just off to the right, well, what are the odds of those two oblong kind of skull eye openings, and then the other one's just to the left? And then what's below that? This is problematic. And another example of the same seeming phenomena or seeming coincidence. On the top bar, I don't know if yours is blocked too, which is fine. This meeting is being recorded. If you don't turn that off, it gives the mission longitude, latitude, etc. Quite well organized, as well as often the photograph number. Pareidolia, the tendency to perceive a specific, often meaningful image in a random or ambiguous visual pattern. This is all of us since we were kids. And it's fun. I think it fulfills kind of a psychological enjoyment in just perceiving the world around us to find recognizable images which are coincidental. I also extend it to the world of human-made things as opposed to just nature. A favorite of mine. It's kind of in the not I want to believe department, but I am enjoying. Now, this one is a bit more complicated in that it appears to me to be a stylized rendition, possibly of a Native American, and it exists in the Badlands of South Dakota, I think, and it's hundreds of yards across. Coincidence? Possibly, but wow. Photograph I took, I must say, since the beginning of the year, I've been watching clouds more carefully to find that random image in it. Here we have a poodle stepping forward, about to become something else. Not your best cloud image, but making my point. Thank you, Google Earth. Isn't that wonderful? Oh, the dangers of being a vegetarian. And let me have a little fun here. So especially folks who are predisposed to the reality of other intelligences on parts unknown, this is not that challenging. However, the particular literature around images on the moon goes back to probably the 1950s or earlier. George Leonard is a pioneer in this subject. I think this was published about 1960 or so, and is filled with hundreds of line drawings because he didn't have access to be able to publish the photos that he had seen. Extraterrestrial Archaeology by David Childress is a book that came out late 70s, early 80s, and also uses, in his case, probably second, maybe third generation Xerox images, but they do tell the tale. Moon Anomalies, more or less scientific book devoted just to the subject. Also, a fascinating book with only a section on, but looking at the possibilities of life and activity on the surface of the moon. Then came 1991, I believe, and the game changed with the publication of Richard Hoagland's The Monuments of Mars. And this introduced us all to what became known as the face on Mars. And I, for one, was terribly excited about it. Also, the entire area surrounding it, Cydonia, so named, has so many interesting anomalies or potential anomalies in it. Now, just when this subject was really at its height, um, NASA kind of rained on everybody's parade and said, it's really this, but it was the way that the light was hitting it and the shadows and the nature of the resolution of the camera, and maybe not. Um, in any case, the story kind of went away. The photos you're going to be seeing are ones that I am convinced are authentic, but I don't have the provenance for. Ones I suspect are, a few that I'm quite sure are not, that I want you to see nonetheless, and many that are, fully researched, have the framing material around them, and are what they are. In this age of not believing any photographic image or piece of camera footage, because we know that it can be faked. We just know that. But when you have a database, as in the NASA database, to compare your material to, then you have a research tool. This. And Aurelio, can you guys see my arrow moving on this? Excellent. Hooray for technology. Um, we didn't make this. No natural explanation has ever been offered for it. It's very rudimentary, but if you allow your eyes to really take a moment and look at this, say, that easily could be a rectangular structure on a plateaued area with another structure there and a drop there, or that is an illusion or a shadow. But I think you see what I'm talking about. This is where you can say to yourself, I'm beginning to buy this nonsense, or my eyes are growing more sensitive to what we're talking about here. Okay, we have a real big problem here 4 times over, and that is this, this, and this. They don't come as an accessory when a comet or a meteor hits the surface. It blows everything out. It doesn't leave a white dot, which could be interpreted as a geodesic structure, and certainly not in such close configurations. When I first looked at this, I wasn't sure whether I was looking at something convex or concave in both cases, and whether it was shadow. Anyway, I think you see what I'm talking about. The light is coming from the lower left, casting 2 large shadows, but what is this kind of organizedness to this whole structure here? That's not natural, really, in my mind. And really a more glaring situation here. And certainly here. There is no chance that this happened in nature. And I'm willing to bet nor this. Now, again, this is a photograph that I don't have the provenance on, but which I strongly suspect is what it is, because we have other ones that we do have the provenance on that are, in so many words, the same thing. Looking at this as in a number of related images, my thoughts go to, a drone passing over some ancient part of Syria or Iraq and just passing over the remains of a town or village several millennia old. a bit more glaring here in both cases. I find this terribly exciting. And at the same time, just one more reason to feel incredibly frustrated with the way that things are progressing. This should have been front page news on the New York Times, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, whenever. It doesn't work like that. Also, again, in terms of the sensitivity that we kind of develop, if you look at enough of these pictures here to here, and not only are these two rectangular shapes, do they distinguish themselves, but really, what about this, and this? They're just, is that nature or not? Once again, I first saw this photograph and I thought, this looks like Sanskrit, like pressing those little images into clay tablets, but it's not. It is a photo taken from several hundred miles up of the surface of this part of the moon. And I'm fine if anyone with, the geology, I was going to say earth science, moon science, so to say, can explain to us that this is simply one of the ways that this particular kind of rock face observes over hundreds of thousands or, I'm fine with that. But I'm not fine with what I'm looking at as being dismissed as inconsequential. Same here. Now, first time I looked at that image, the first thing that came to me was like an old-fashioned observatory type building. But certainly the odds of it forming in nature, with so many right angles and so many seemingly intentioned details, is again problematic. Once again, first time I looked at this, am I looking at shadow or something convex? And is there an explanation for this kind of depression or photographic representation that's purely natural? I'm fine if there is, and it's not that extreme an example. It's just worthy of our attention. This a bit more. Game over. This interests me in that a mountain that happened in a particular way in its later years, later millions of years, may erode in a pyramidal kind of way. Or this may be the eroded remains of a pyramid. I think we have a little reason to believe that that has happened before. Again, natural or not? I think natural, but NASA uses the word pinnacles to describe an anomaly that they have found on the moon that are towers, and they're massive, and no explanation for them has ever been given. An early photograph, I think this is from a 1969 mission, and we're seeing this at an appreciable distance from the landed camera, but it would have to be extremely large. Now, again, we have a crater with that anomaly in the middle of it. And are we seeing a tower here blocking? I think so. At first, I thought this is some kind of shadow or natural, fissure or what have you, but this image genuinely blocks the crater. Therefore, it's standing up, and therefore it's many miles tall. another type of pinnacle. I don't believe these things are natural or can be natural. My opinion purely. And I have no expertise in this area. Again, you can, and I encourage you at a certain point, some of you in this room, to pick up on this. All you need to do is start by Googling Mars and Moon anomaly websites, and you're off and running. When I started to relook at these photographs, I thought, you know, surely somebody in this kind of world of anomaly on the surface and all of the photographic material they're working with, surely somebody a little bit unethical or a lot unethical has messed around with the images or tried to put something there that's not there. Well, soon enough, I learned that there are a lot of images released by NASA that most assuredly show photographic tampering. The thing is, in every single case, the tampering was done before the image was released to the public. What are we trying to hide here? And you'll see how this is not just a change in terrain. Somebody is doing something intentional to not let us see certain things in this image. What is it they don't want us to see here? Again, once again, you can see this is the Clementine mission, latitude, longitude, resolution, the person that discovered it, the report number. And again, it shows the website here, Mars Anomaly research.com. Again, what the heck? And what is this? What are these straight lines? Is that natural? Nothing to see here, folks. Move on. Now, somebody or some team of people working at NASA or NASA JPL have gone to a great deal of trouble. Imagine how many more photographs we have in this nature or that they have to go out of their way so that we would not see something. How many people do any of us think have the clearance level working for NASA to know that this stuff is on the moon and Mars and then be trained to technologically remove these images? Probably a very small number relative to the number of images that exist. And as a result, one of the most exciting parts of all of this for me is coming up soon in terms of things they missed covering up. They almost are, haunting looking. Very large structures. This has been one of my favorite photographs going back, I don't remember how long, emblemizing this kind of surface mystery that we have on parts of our nearest lunar friend. This photograph, I think, is at least 30 years old. And that vertical straight line is, as I recall, more than 25 miles long. This anomaly exists on the moon. Now, I don't know enough about how craters form to exclude the possibility that some of them are perfect, as almost if they were manufactured. I think maybe I'm jumping the gun, but you know what? I don't know. And isn't it interesting? Mars. We are beginning on the ground. We are no longer several hundred miles up looking down. These are picked up by our various Mars rovers. And on most of them, we don't have a sense of scale. Some of them we do. Somebody joked with me that they thought this was some kind of just a machine with a large screw attached to it. Intriguing. Can this happen in nature? Maybe, but I'm not familiar with how. It almost looks like a bunch of old coins stuck in the soil. And there may well be a scientific explanation for this, but I'm damned if I know what it is. I don't know. Does anybody read that as anything but like a bottle? Let's also remember, given the huge expanse of the surface of Mars and the relatively small number of rovers landed, per square mile, and the limited area they can roam in, it's amazing to me in a way that any of them have ever picked up anything that is as surprising as the things that we're seeing here. An even more basic kind of vessel in my interpretation. Could be a bottle, a perfume container, or a Christmas ornament, or something else. This captured my imagination in that we've all seen this before too often. It's a small torn piece off of a sheet of plastic. And my first question was, is it more logical that somehow this little piece ripped loose from the lander or some apparatus, connected to it? And there it is lying there. And of course, it would be logical to think that we caught it in the area of the lander. I'm fine with that. But if it's not ours, or is it a sheet of plastic? Or again, should that be there? I don't know enough about the surface of Mars to say no, but I'm intrigued by it. Right. Game over again. This is the real deal, folks. This is not a fake. A number of missions have captured things quite by chance in the sky, and also in some cases in the sky while something else is intriguing on the ground. Of course, that central object, but maybe this as well. And whose is that? Another example of what referred to here is artifacts in the Gustav crater that were captured by chance. Really as standard as they can be for, so many Earth-based reports of unidentified flying objects. Interesting, right? Some natural deterioration, okay, but it does suggest, again, uh, like the pareidolia, that it might be the remains of an old drum or um, a container or not. This, what the hell? I'm clueless. And well, there you go. And it really looks like some old part from something hatch-like, or but it doesn't look natural. Same here. And are we indeed seeing what seems to be almost like sort of a beach cabana kind of standing small structure, or is this huge, or is that darkness um, well, complete shadow? As Stanton Friedman used to say, it's in my gray box. Okay, once again, Gustav Crater. And what are we seeing here? What we're seeing here is something that you can see on Earth in the Outer Hebrides, in the Orkney Islands, in Wiltshire, in the south of England. It's a cairn, either for burial purposes or storage or surrounding a well or to mark a particular event. But that one is on the surface of Mars. A whole new type of anomaly here. Eagle Crater. And what the hell? I think for most of us, conditioned as we are, that suggests a vehicle with two headlights. Beyond that, I have nowhere to go. Here, even more, it certainly seems like it shouldn't be there. Right, a long shot here of what appears to be a sculpture or a standing person. If it's truly one or the other, I'm betting on the former, but it shouldn't, it could be a play of light. If there's one chance in a million that this could happen in nature, I'm open to the possibility, but it sure looks like a statue of the human form on Mars to me. A light that wasn't coming from us, picked up on this rover mission. The surface of Mars, if you've ever, really taken time to look at pictures of it, aside from just the wonder of how geology works and how nature fashions these bodies, for me, my training is as a painter, and I do look at this kind of imagery sometimes as just art. Anyway, back to the face on Mars, and I wonder if it was NASA attempting to pull the wool over our eyes and presenting us with that much more ambiguous image. If this is real, we have to remember it's something, as I recall, like 5 miles long, 2.5 miles wide, half mile high. This is a hell of a project. Or it's just a mistaken image. Right, in the area of Cydonia, this isn't a crater. It's more like a hill fort from Neolithic times, with the equivalent of a moat and possibly a fortification here. But neither one of these are fully explainable naturally. And I don't, well, more ambiguous, but still interesting. D&M pyramid, definitely problematic in terms of being natural. seem to be structures here. And again, a sense of a fortification. This is, I think, just beautiful and nothing anomalous. It's just part of the way the surface of the planet looks. This, on the other hand, is an image that's been around for some time. The nickname is the Inca City, uh, for the understandable idea that, could this happen in nature, or is it the remains of an ancient civilization? Very much something that we struggle with in certain ancient areas of our planet. I don't have the answer, but I'd like to know how this forms in nature. Now, this one image interested me particularly because it was suggested that it might be the remains after 50,000 years or something of a quarry. And it was a good argument based on the fact that with this close up, and this is still a pretty massive area, when we look at an actual picture of a quarry, we get it. Okay, leave it alone for 100,000 years, it looks like that, except that the entire area for many miles running on this part of Mars was this. And so I think we can let that notion go. This, for me, is another level of interest where I was drawn kind of deeper into some of these mysteries. Looking at these shapes, they're mostly just a number of horizontal, dashes. But if you think of like a Pueblo city and the way that structures were built, along ledges, all of a sudden, and look at the rectangles, the distinct rectangular shapes in some of these areas, it takes on a different feeling, all the more so when we go a bit deeper into the image. Now, I don't know about you, but this suggests buildings to me, and an area in front of buildings, and possibly up through this area as well. Even, you start to look, these particular small lines, are they indicative of something manufactured or something natural? This detail also intrigued me because those are two rectangles. Those are two rectangles. And if you squint your eyes, once again, look to the bottom, you see that these pixels come out decidedly rectangular. Now, we have been told since who knows how long that, yes, there is water on Mars, but it is embedded in the permasoil, and we have scientific ways of extracting it, and that will be the basis for sustaining life. Hey, folks, it's on the surface. You can stick your feet in it. Well, they probably burn off in a second or freeze, but whatever. I just found that upper left photograph quite revelatory. Also, again, the container, the containing area of what looks to me like water or a liquid, is not naturally shaped, as we can verify in the two impression pictures below. Okay, once again, is this some strange refraction, or are we once again having the wool pulled over our eyes a bit to effuse what's going on here? And what the heck? Is this something that happens in nature? And if it's not, is it an enclosure to carry people or water, or what is going on here? Especially in the lower portion, well, really right through this damn thing, the pixelization does not suggest a randomness. It suggests an incredible sense of order on the level of, a distant architectural shot of a very busy urban area. Am I reading too much into this? Well, your opinion is at least as valid as mine. Right. Another image that immediately caught my attention. At this point, I'm several months into doing this work, and I'm either better at buying into uh, all of this theoretical want to believing, or seeing things that are extremely reminiscent of things I've seen on Earth most of my life. In this case, a building complex overlooking some kind of development of structures, with possibly another one in the background and one here. Is that so crazy? Even more so. I mean, it is a structure. It is a structure. There's no question. And it didn't happen in nature. This one goes back to 1975. Mike Singh was one of the people who really pioneered analyzing these photographs. Um, Again, I don't know if you could chase him down or whether that link is still active, very possibly not. But look at that. Now, again, this person might have faked it, but you have to start to wonder at a certain point, am I leaning too far away from this? What I can't believe what I'm seeing, even though I know a lot about this stuff, and very little surprises me. Isn't this marvelous? We didn't do it. And is that, well, it's something traveling, or at least on that that line. Light coming from the left. And is that just a little too regular? One of my favorite photographs in this whole exploration, and of course, it doesn't have to do with seeing something anomalous, it has something to do with seeing something quite wonderful. Right. Back to the towers, but first, these. These have been observed in a number of areas on Mars. Um, so far, no one, to the best of my knowledge, has come up with any kind of natural explanation for their formation. If they are manufactured, as some of us strongly feel that might be the case, what is their purpose? And again, I'm fine with just being a conduit for water or people or a conveyance or somehow all of these things. And what are the details around it? Most of us, you know, I it's something I would not fix on, but I will not dismiss the observer on their observations of what they're possibly seeing. And the softening. If this is intelligently manufactured, is it logical to assume that we might be seeing some activity or some detailing along both sides of it? If so, somebody doesn't want us to see it. Again, more theoreticals. And I reading into this, of course, because we're not sure how to read these images, not fully, but I certainly like to think, and I do think, that these tubes are either translucent or transparent, that certainly light comes through them, and perhaps they're very clear. And that would be a good size light for sure. Hmm. Just somebody's thought, but we're seeing what we're seeing, whatever it is. Now we come back to these effusions, and these might be 15, 20 miles tall. But is somebody, well, did they miss this? Or am I reading too much into it? Or will you be reading too much into it when you see it? But that certainly could be a structure not unlike a building here on Earth. And not quite as totally fused, but something's going on here. It's almost like somebody worked a technological paintbrush over these fuzzed out areas to keep us from seeing what's there. And again, I remind you that all of these effusions or these photographs containing them were released like this. Nobody did this after the fact. Well, the great architect Mies van der Rohe once said, less is more. And for me, among the most exciting images that I've seen that I am convinced are authentic show the least, but what they show tells the most. When years back, photographs that were ultimately, part of the NASA collection or shown to the public were formed when there were large landscapes by strips of photographic information that were then, combined together to produce the full picture. Someone who had been assigned the job of one of these fusion jobs of airbrushing technologically out certain areas that they didn't want to be released to the public, missed an edge. This is the real deal. They didn't completely cover up something they should have. And this is not an isolated example. And how did these happen in nature? Now, if somebody just showed you this photograph, it would mean nothing and just be kind of, huh? But given what we know about this photograph, where it was taken, and an intention to deceive, in a way, this is one of the most exciting kind of pro-disclosure images that could be presented before Congress. Our mind tries to come up to put some of these things into words. It's not that I don't believe it. It's just that it's unbelievable, Now, this image came to me without any kind of provenance, but this one is a curiosity image. And it's a perfect example of how NASA responds when queried about these kinds of things. So I actually have a quote here relative to this particular image from NASA. The NASA Curiosity rover image from May 7, 2022 does, and is that the year? No, this is a different one, but the same configuration. does not show a doorway on Mars. Despite some internet speculation to the contrary, the door-like appearance in a cliffside snapped in that month is due to the angles of light and shadows and shapes made by the geometry in the area of Gale Crater. So, the doorway-like appearance in the cliffside snapped is due to the angles of light and shadows and shapes made by the geology in this area of Gale Crater. Well, I can think of a two-syllable word to describe my response to that, but I won't say it. But this is what we're up against, and this is not what they said it was. Right. As jarring an image and configuration as I came upon, in my whole search, this one has stayed with me and will. Now, remember, what we're about to see could be 50 years old, 50,000 years old, or a great deal older. Let your eyes adjust. Seems to be the corner of a structure on which is a cross. Now, the cross is a simple symbol. It predates the birth of Christianity, and it's fairly easy to make. However, this is not something that happened in nature. What? And as challenging as anything we're going to look at. I remember at a certain moment in my life saying a mantra repeatedly to the effect of every once in a while somebody wins $100 million lottery. Every once in a while somebody wins $100 million lottery. Well, yes, and there are points beyond which it is fair to assume that what we are seeing is not some play of light or coincidental image. Who has been here? This is the moon of Mars. Oh my gosh, I don't have my note here. Not Phoebos. Well, this moon has, and I'm sorry for not having that detail at hand, what was the center plot point in the Kubrick movie 2001, except that this obelisk is miles high. This image is one we have seen all our life. It's all over the world, and it's suggestive of only one thing: the remains of a simple rectangular structure. It's on the moon. This one is on Mars, and we are stuck with it. My underlying purpose in wanting to make this presentation, and I'll be making it one more time, and then I don't think again, moving on to more pressing matters, is that these photographs and the many, many, many hundreds, if not thousands of more that underscore the reality of what we have at hand here could be an extremely valuable tool in moving toward further toward full disclosure. I think the challenge will be for someone, and it won't be me, but I'm glad to have taken the torch this far, is to find a way to present this subject to someone who can and might be interested in doing something about it. I don't know offhand if any of Connecticut's congressional or senatorial representatives are involved or interested in what is going on within the House of Representatives and the disclosure hearings. But one of you might be the one to move forward with this and make this part of that story. Otherwise, thank you all so much for listening and watching, and please follow up on what I'm doing here. I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and Aurelio, again, thank you for the honor of letting me be the lead speaker in this wonderful conference series.
My pleasure. If anyone has any questions for Peter, please type it in the chat box. I will relay it to Peter. I do have a couple of questions in regards to your presentation.
Me too.
There, I know that there were folks who used to work for NASA who have claimed to have been the people who have airbrushed a lot of these photographs. And they've gone on the record. I'm not sure if you've actually researched who these folks are, or you've actually read up upon. I remember as a child, I did read a lot about Ingo Swann, and during his remote viewing,
Yes.
saying that he did see a lot of these large structures on the far side of the moon. I would like to get any of your thoughts on these.
Well, I'll tell you, I have some thoughts on that. Until I was introduced to the subject of remote viewing, maybe 30 plus years ago, I thought it was kind of a joke until I was introduced to the work of Ingo Swann, who was the first person I read on this subject, and I was turned around 180 degrees. So I know that Ingo had those readings, and it doesn't surprise me, needless to say.
We have a question from Bill. Is there a handout that lists the NASA locations to the links to the photographs in your presentation?
Not that I know of. I would suggest, if you're really interested, that you dive in. Again, you can start with Mars Anomalies Research.com, or simply go to your search engine and type in Mars anomalies type websites, and you're off and running. And you can build your own database. I did not put this talk together in a thoroughly scientific manner, noting, every location of every find, mission number, etc. I certainly could have. You only have so much time, and you don't want to have a presentation like this be too dry. But it's a very good question, and I kind of wish I did put one together as I went, at least for the limited ones that I had done.
I believe if you do some research on Google, you'll be able to find a lot of this has already been covered by other researchers. Looking into
Oh yeah.
these structures and anomalies on both the moon and on Mars. We have a question from Frank, who says, "Do you still have contact with Larry Warren?
What about Larry Warren?
Are you still in contact with Larry?"
Not for almost about 8 years.
Okay. Is perhaps the inhabitants of Mars left the decayed planet and have come here in hopes that they could survive? What do you think of that theory?
Good luck. No idea.
A question. I know you've done a lot with the alien abduction phenomenon. Have you come across anyone from their abduction experience to have been taken to either one of Mars or on the moon?
Never, that I recall. No, certainly nobody who claimed that.
Okay. Because that would be very curious if that was, I know it's usually within some sort of craft or, enclosed space, but it would have been very
Yes.
interesting if it was very out in the open. It was like, oh, I could see what looked to be the surface of the moon or,
Yeah.
the surface of Mars from within one of these, structures that we're trying to, explain. Okay, let's see. Hold on a second. We have one from James. Um, Thoughts on the recent press release of the Air Force drones over Langley's? This is a hot topic news in the last 2 weeks. I'm not sure if you can answer this. Anything in regards to, the drones from the mothership that they've been talking about going over Langley Air Force Base in the month of December 2023. I think it was for 2 weeks that there were mass amounts of like these objects surveilling Langley Air Force Base. Um, do you know anything about that from from your community, Peter?
I really don't. And what minor opinion that I have about it is completely uninformed. And in some cases in this work and in my life, I prefer literally not to have an opinion than to have one based on nothing really that I can offer. So yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have anything to add to that story.
I think a lot of folks are just, befuddled and just perplexed on what these are. I do know that there was a fact that a lot of people were asking why didn't the base fire upon these objects? And there's a long-standing um, policy for all bases. If there is a drone or something observing the base and it's hovering over the base itself, unless it has hostile intentions, the military is not allowed to fire upon. I think part of
Really?
the rules of engagement. But I think they did have some jets fly and sort of like surveil the objects, but that's been kind of hazy on the part of the Pentagon to relay what they saw up close, these pilots and everything. I think it
Yeah.
remains to be seen at this point. Um, do you have any thoughts on why they would airbrush to hide something instead of making it look exactly what is next to it?
I think it's an imperfect process, or they'd be doing a better job of it. Um, I, I can only think like I do, and maybe better to just cover it up and have people question about it later than leave it the way it is, and paradigm shift the world in one moment as everybody sees these huge structures, obviously intended and not natural, on the surface of Mars. Can't answer that question. I think, again, how many people they have doing this work, how many people they have checking up on them in their establishment, given the number of images that they have allowed out into the world, it's a very daunting challenge.
Yeah, I would say Google people like former NASA employees who have airbrushed photographs of Mars and the moon, and you'll come up with some names, and you can actually read their testimony and their
I
experience.
think what we're seeing in the photos in question here is the technological digital equivalent of airbrushing.
Correct. I think a lot of these have come like when the first moon landers and satellites have gone through back in the 60s. So I think like the actual airbrushing started with them, and now it's become like more like photoshopping and everything. And I think it's just, I would believe it would be a thankless task to give to someone, and they're just doing this. It's like, okay, I got to get through like
Yes.
200, 300 of these in my 8-hour shift here, and I'm
Yeah.
just trying to do this as fast as I can.
I think it might well come down to that, although it seems, well, it can't be that simple. There has to be more security than that. Well, we don't know. We don't know.
Yeah. We do. We don't know. Any more questions before we call it an evening? I want to thank all of you for joining us for this inaugural presentation with Peter Robbins. Once again, Peter, thank you so much. You've always been a pleasure to talk to, and your expertise in the unknown is, and also your honesty and saying to us that I really don't know about this has been, always been a breath of fresh air. And that's what we always look for in our UFO conference here, to,
My
go up to
pleasure.
the sky and, use our imagination a little bit to figure out what these unknowns are, but, at least keeping one foot on the ground. And
Exactly.
just to let you know, we will have these presentations, the live virtual ones, up on our YouTube channel for the Danbury Library in the next several days. Be sure to check out tomorrow evening with our friend Linda Zimmerman. Be talking about the Danbury Triangle. That will be at
Great.
6 p.m. tomorrow. Please, if you haven't, register. And also go visit us at danburylibrary.org for more presentations to follow this inaugural one. And again, on behalf of the library, Danbury Library, Peter, thank you so much. And
My
we'll
pleasure.
talk soon. And thank you everyone for showing up this evening. We'll see you tomorrow. And be well.